But let's first go to some technicals and into the mind of Kevin Green. Joining me, KG, our senior markets correspondent. We talked a little bit of those levels with Mike Block there. What do you see in terms of technicals and gamma stuff, Kevin?
Yeah, well, Oliver, overnight, basically this morning, the updated open interest numbers, we actually did see an increase in the 6,100 calls. So we actually did see a pretty decent rolling up from the 60/50s, which has been an area of resistance. And obviously we're testing that right now, moving those up to 6,100, which I think is a positive development. There's more optimism. You're starting to see more structure being placed into the market. And then also moving up that negative gamma area to 59.90. Now, 6,000 is really the level, but 59.90 is also kind of catching a little bit of of some flows here over the last couple of trading sessions. Now, one thing to kind of note, yesterday we did see a positive day, but it was a very light day across the board when you're looking at the S&P 500 composite total volume here. So we want to actually kind of see some follow through here today. Now, that's not outside of the norm. We did have a holiday, but a follow through session today, try to push up a little bit higher with some aggressive volume, I think would be ultimately key for the market. Now, we're also seeing a little bit of a difference here today with the advanced decline line. We're starting off the day actually in the green for the advanced decline line. Yesterday, the majority of stocks, actually around 37% of stocks were actually green yesterday. So it was mega cap heavy, it was tech heavy, as you kind of talked about here. But once again, that rolling up and rolling out is really something you want to see on the long term. I still have this, and I have had this on the chart for the last, let's say, 3 weeks or so, this drawdown breakout extension that we had showing that the 60/50 area was actually that drawdown and extension level here. Technically, we probably would want to see a pullback coming down to around 60/20, testing that and then seeing a bounce and then moving higher. That would be a really good reset overall for the market and really would keep the bullish trend intact.
All right. Love that we are still looking at that wedge. You know, we haven't ventured too far from that thing, so it still works. What's your kind of process and thesis on how long to hold technical channels and stuff, KG? Just give me a quick little education.
Well, I'm gonna keep it on there, and what's happening right now is we actually were in the wedge, we broke out to the upside, we got back into the wedge, and now we broke to the downside. Now you could say we're making new all-time highs, which is great, but we're now utilizing that area of support within that wedge now as an area of resistance. Now, technically, some people would say, "Oh man, that's not really a bad thing. You have a support resistance type of flip scenario taking place," but the trajectory of that trend line is still to the upside. So as long as you can kind of grind it higher, and it's still an area of resistance, but day by day that trend line is still moving up, and if the market's moving up with it, then that's a net positive here. Obviously, at some point in time, we will see an apex, and the apex actually is going to probably come by maybe Friday of this week, actually. So we'll have an apex. Once that apex is there, I'm not going to extend it any further. It's pretty much done for, but I think the lines and keeping that on the chart is still going to be intact. So that's how I use it. Right now, it's still working in a technical fashion. It's just an area of resistance. It's not a negative area of resistance. It's a positive trend line, but at the end of the day, it's what we've been riding. Literally, Oliver, we've been riding that line since November 25th without hiccup.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it too. Just until we get too far from it. As long as we're hugging it, might as well use it. Use what we got. Also like the note about yesterday's session too with the lower volumes. KG, on the open interest, on the options stuff, do you see any big movements happening? And to your point about getting movement this week, I would think this would be a high candidate for from here to the end of the year, some movement this week.
Well, hopefully. I mean, actually, the equity session yesterday was very low when it came to volume, as I kind of noted. On the option side, it was actually the opposite. We saw a lot of movement yesterday in the option. So that's actually a little bit of a bright sign, which is why we actually adjusted those, that positive gamma area to the upside, because calls were being rolled up and rolled out. They bought those calls back at the 60/50, sold the 6100s, obviously moving out. What we will see over the next couple of weeks here, Oliver, though, is also going to be a repositioning. You're going to get a roll taking place here. We're coming up to a quarterly expiration, third week of December. We got to keep that on the radar. And then we also have leap expiration in January. So now, and Jim Carson talks about this all the time, right? The January expiration is going to be really on the radar. So we should actually see volumes for the most part for options kicking up here, even though the equity market might be dull. Now, if we're actually looking at for an intraday basis, I think we also have some optimism here and maybe some pressures that are taking place. 60/50, once again, an area of resistance. We could see actually an area of support potentially at at the 60.15 area, so be mindful of that. And then we did see some call selling happening at the 60.70. So we're inching up, but the 60.50 has been kind of a tough level for us to really try to break through over the last couple of trading sessions. We're pulling back from it right now. You got jolts coming out in around 20 minutes or so. And so that'll probably be the catalyst for us to either try to break out to the upside or break down here.
Well said. Can't wait for jolts. Love jolts. Kind of like my favorite, actually, I think, Jobs point. You know, because I just said big numbers, and it's been one of the kind of consistent decliners. So, all right, thanks, KG.